I'm probably ready. All right, good to go for the 20th episode of Sinister Sunday. Kind of cool to be here. Moment in the kind of streaming history. 20 solid episodes of Sinister Sunday. I kind of started it would be a thing, and we'd be able to bring you weekly kind of cool topics to talk about, and it's episode 20, so that's pretty cool. And this episode, if you haven't already read the title, is going to be about our most important bands and kind of a brief kind of history on why they're important to us. You guys in the chat, feel free to tell us important albums are to you, what your most important bands are, maybe discuss why. We'll kind of glance over in the chat periodically. But if you really want a question or a comment to be addressed by the panel, please consider the super chat. I think it's like a minute Canadian, so probably 70 cents American, because our economy's like crap. So if you really want your question or comment to be addressed by the panel, feel free to drop a super chat. It's make sure that yours gets addressed. It also kind of helps out the channel. Mr. Sunday's rolling. So with that said, I'm going to introduce my panel as always. To my left, probably left, is Nick from Deathlike Reviews. He is our newest member to the Rebellion family. Please give him a warm welcome. Please go check out his tribe. He does great videos and collection updates and probably some reviews soon. But yeah, go choose. Next, beside him is our previous newest member. Everyone calls him Cookie Monster, but his name from the Green Iron Cannibal channel. Really good content, collection updates, unboxings. Most of our a bit similar, so that you, as the viewer, have something to kind of like go in without any misconceptions. So yeah, go check out Matt Full's channel. Great addition to the Rebellion family, and one of our veterans here. That is Trez from Total Metal Rejection. He's one of the Rebellion family members. If you're not subscribed to him right now, I don't know why you're watching this, because his content is better than mine. So go check out his latest renewed Morgue Tapes video. So looking forward to that myself, because I haven't had the time. You bet your ass I'm going to be checking that out when I can. So we've kind of just code for who's going first, and Matt from the Green Iron Cannibal has kind of offered to start us off. So Matt, can you tell your most important albums to you and bands, and maybe a little bit about why?
So first up for me is the band that's basically the reason why I do anything musically, and that's Green Day. And this album's 21st Century Breakdown. Which the 10-year anniversary of this record is this year. Green Day as an entire band is basically the reason I do anything musically. They are the reason I started my first band. They're the reason I started singing, playing guitar, playing bass, all of that. And then they're also the band that got me into collecting physical music, because my dad had a couple of Green Day albums and I wanted to learn the words, and I found out in their albums, just like most albums, there were the lyrics to it. And so I wanted to buy all Green Day stuff to learn all the lyrics to all their songs. And they still are one of my favorite bands. You know, when I started my first band, I was playing sort of punk-like stuff, but now I can't really do that because I feel like I'm just ripping off Green Day, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, you know, I play metal now on guitar, and so having a sort of punk-like influence, I think, is pretty cool. So, yeah, I know a lot of people talk shit about them and people will say they're not punk or whatever. Now, it doesn't really matter to me, but they're my favorite band. No one's opinion's ever going to change that. And they are, well, they were the only band that I would wait 2 hours or more in line for at a concert just so I could get to the front. So with that, next up is this band here, Iron Maiden. This album, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, it was the first Iron Maiden album I ever listened to. Iron Maiden is actually my dad's favorite album, and Iron Maiden's my dad's favorite band. They were the first concert I ever went to, and part of the reason, along with Green Day and Cannibal Corpse, why I have my channel name. And I don't know why I picked this album out of all of them to start, because I had their entire discography on my iPod, I think, at the time I got my first iPod in 2009. I think it was something about the album artwork that drew me in. And so Iron Maiden was basically the first metal band that I really got into. And then from there, it just kind of got heavier, which some people will contradict that statement. With this band, Black Veil Brides, this is their first album, We Stitch These Wounds. And this album in particular, I like how raw it sounds, because in comparison to a lot of metalcore records that were coming out in the late 2000s and early 2010s, they were incredibly overproduced. And this one was more stripped back and raw in comparison to a lot of those bands. It's not underproduced or lo-fi like a black metal record, but it stood out, I guess, in the crowd of overproduced metalcore bands that were coming out at that time. And Black Veil Brides, that first album, was really the only album that you could consider a metalcore record, because from that they went to more of a hard rock type sound. And because of their metalcore sound, I got into that whole scene, and then eventually got heavier to deathcore and stuff. And then eventually I found the band that would change it all for me, Cannibal Corpse. Torture was the first album that came out after I became a fan of them, and it's still my favorite record. Here's the uncensored artwork for anyone who hasn't seen the uncensored artwork. This one is still my favorite record. I love their early stuff, like most Cannibal Corpse fans, but that record will always have a special place in my heart. And Cannibal Corpse was the band that got me into death metal. Just like Black Veil Brides with all the metalcore bands, Cannibal Corpse got me into Morbid Angel, Death, countless others in death metal. And I've been lucky enough to see them the last 3 times they've come to Denver. They put on an excellent show every single time. Like I said earlier, they are also part of the reason why I have my YouTube channel name, and it's also part of my Instagram name. And then for black metal, my entrance to black metal, which I'm not a huge fan of the genre, but I still like some bands. And Insertion Diaboli by Dimmu Borgir, a lot of people don't consider it a black metal record at all, but for their early stuff anyway, that was definitely black metal. And from there, discovering all the black metal bands that were in the 90s. And also a lot of symphonic metal bands too, like Avantasia and Sonata Arctica, just because that record in particular, there's a whole lot of symphonic elements to it. And then one thing that I never really got into or was aware of that much with any of these bands was like the whole underground metal scene that I, as well as a lot of, or probably almost everyone watching this right now, is a fan of. I never really got into that with any of the records, but that changed when I found out about this band and this album, Starspawn by Blood Incantation. And also, along with that, another reason why I supported them so heavily from the start is they're from Denver, Colorado, which is where I'm from, and I will happily support any local bands that are coming out of Denver or just Colorado in general. You know, spread the word about them, spread the word about the local scene, because every single band that we know and love was once a local band. And yeah, like I said, that Blood Incantation is the reason I got into the whole underground scene. You know, I found out about Dark Descent Records, all the bands signed to there, and then other labels like 20 Bucks Spin, Profound Lore, Nuclear War Now. Blood Incantation brought me into the underground scene, and I'm very happy for it. Love those guys. And then I guess one that it didn't really introduce me to any new music or anything, but it got me into cassette collecting, which was something I wasn't a huge fan of. But Nightfear with Cryptasm. This is for anyone else who watches any other YouTubers. This is Brandon, Scourge of Vinyl, here on YouTube. This is his band. They play crossover. They're from Pennsylvania. They play, it's some pretty good stuff. They got a lot of thrash metal influence, like most crossover. And now bring it back to Denver. It was put out on Graven Earth Records, and that's a Denver-based cassette label. Always going to show support to anything out of Denver.
Yeah, it's a pretty fantastic album.
Yeah, I really like it. I can't wait to see what they do next. It was also produced by Arthur Risk, who's done Pissgrave, I think Power Trip.
Ooh, Pissgrave. Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. Almost went Randy Savage on you. Ooh, Pissgrave. Great shit, Pissgrave.
Yeah. So that's my list for the most part. I'm sure there's loads of others that I'm skipping over right now, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to be with every single one of us. You know, loads of bands in my collection, loads of other bands that aren't in my collection that I like and would love to talk about, but either because they're not as important as these ones, or I'm blanking it right now. You know, they're not going to get talked about.
Well, it was a pretty damn good list in my opinion. A lot of very good bands. Some bands that kind of get like overlooked simply because of the elitists out there that like to shit on post-hardcore bands or metalcore bands. Like you threw up the Bides. That was a really, really good album back when it came out. I remember really, despite the kind of negative atmosphere that they were getting by the bull and black metal kind of dudes, but the lo-fi sound of it was good too, like you said, because a lot of hardcore and metalcore scene was just way overproduced. They seem to have kind of forgot their roots and were just on. We Stitched These Wounds really held on to that. They kind of in later albums did kind of go for the over, but yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah, that's one thing too with the the overproduction. Basically, after that album, their second album On, they had signed to a major label after We Stitched These Wounds, and that gave them access to more money and stuff like that. So they were able to get a higher production quality. Now, I think, me personally, in particular, the last album, which came out last year, that was way overproduced. But the three records in between their first and their most recent, those were not overproduced, but it was to that point on some songs.
And then they showed that Nightfear one by Brandon from Scourge Vinyl. That was really good. I missed the Metalhead box that came in. You know, some extra money. I made sure to throw some money towards that album and the Wraith album.
Oh, yeah.
So anyone who's watching, make sure you go check out Scourge of Vinyl's channel and go Nightfear project. Excellent, kind of like lo-fi black and thrash for sure. Did you mention what got you into thrash, or are you into thrash? I should ask.
I do. That actually is one that I skipped. I guess I got in sort of like, I don't really want to call it the generic way, but I guess the easy way. The big four: Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. I kind of latched on to Slayer more than everyone else, and then I guess after that was early Metallica, and then early Megadeth. Anthrax, I like them, but I just never really got attached to them. And then from there,
They're really good live.
Yeah, I've seen Anthrax live twice, actually. Both times opening for Slayer in 2016, and then last year on Slayer's final tour. And I guess from there, I found some German thrash metal, Sodom and Creator. And Creator is still one of my favorite thrash metal bands. I fucking love those guys.
Fuck yeah, Sodom.
Sodom's pretty good too, but Creator, for whatever one reason or another, Creator stuck out more than Sodom or Exhumer. I think they're also from Germany. Any other thrash metal bands, Slayer and Creator were kind of the main two, and then I've discovered some more underground ones like Nightfear and Wraith, Nuclear Omnicide, which is a band every one of you should check out if you're in the thrash. Yeah, loads of other thrash metal bands, I'm sure, that I'm not going to mention because I forgot. But that's my sort of thrash metal upbringing.
Nice, man. Don't mind me. I was just kind of trying to copy that Lord Husk was bringing up into the chat so I can add him to the list later, because I know he mentioned a few good bands, and unfortunately, so I just want to make sure his voice is heard. So yeah, man, thanks for sharing your kind of roots to each band. Like I said, lots of good albums, lots of good bands there for sure. Next, do we want to go Nick or Trez? You guys will kind of have to Roshan, go. Who wants to do it?
I guess I'll go. I gotta decide on what I'll show first here, but actually, I'll show this band. This is Fister. They were kind of my intro. Was kind of my intro into the Doom world and sludge world earlier this year. They're one of the bigger bands from my hometown of St. Louis, and it's super heavy, super slow stuff. It's really great. Don't have enough words to say about it. It's really good, straight up, kind of death doom-ish. But I definitely recommend checking that out.
Huh.
If you're into Doom at all.
The name, sure, you wouldn't want them to be fast.
No. That wasn't their original name. They originally wanted to be called Fisted Sister, but they found there was a band that had already taken that name.
Really? A band had taken Twisted Sister before? Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
God damn.
yeah. Anyway, this my next album was kind of a no-brainer for anyone that's a fan of
Oh,
extreme musical.
Yep.
And I don't really have to talk much about this, but anyone watching, I guarantee, is familiar with this. I actually got into this in an interesting way. There's a guy, we have a corner store by us. The guy pulled up to get a case of beer, and he had this blasting over his stereo. And I asked him what it was when he came back out, and he was like, "Oh, here." He had 2 copies in the car.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Nice. Fucking really cool.
And then I just got one more that I'm gonna show. And that's this album. This was my intro into Norwegian black metal. And I didn't really care for it when I heard it, but I've come around to it, and it's really, really good. Great stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's just, however, I think they're kind of overlooked, and it's not, they're kind of underrated, but check them out if you haven't heard them.
Faster type of black metal.
Yeah,
Most people that are into black metal have went beyond the big 4 of black metal, or either kind of went into like the DSBM side, or the kind of the slower, like, I don't know, like doomier influenced black metal. Not many people don't stick with like the blistering fast kind once past like the first or second tier. But Tsjuder definitely does get overlooked quite a bit because of that.
yeah. That's easily my favorite album by them.
Yeah.
Understandably so. It's really good.
Yeah. That's all I got for albums.
All right. I'm gonna ask you the same thing that I did, Matt. But do you have a band that kind of got you into thrash or like just death metal?
Death for sure did it. Specifically the album Human.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And if you ask me, that is probably the
Nice.
closest thing to a perfect death metal album that there is. Outside of Cannibal Corpse.
All right, cool.
One
Man.
of those bands.
No, the good bands for sure. Pretty good albums to start off with for sure. Like Slayer anymore. Myself, I kind of had like a phase of like enjoying Slayer mid high school, at the end of high school. In Blood is probably one of their best ones that they released. I was also a fan of their Diabolicus in Musica one, which I know a lot of people weren't really fans of.
I like that.
Yeah. That was the
Good.
change of Slayer, I guess.
Yeah.
But everybody at that point in time was also changing, so there wasn't too much on Slayer. As the year and time that was released, everybody was doing the same thing. So yeah, it was a good album too. Good riffs.
Metal had kind of fallen off at that point too. It was mostly dominated by like Green Day had come out by the time that record was out, and you know the whole grunge scene with Pearl Jam and Nirvana. You know that kind of killed metal. You know there were a few bands that managed to get through, like Korn and Pantera. You know they had exploded to success around that time, but you know the mainstream music was pretty much dominated by grunge.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of specific documentary it was. I'm kind of a giant documentary nerd. I like to watch documentaries on like everything that I kind of have an interest in, be it like a specific subgenre of metal or like or serial killers or now skateboarding. But yeah, I seen a documentary how grunge kind of, you know, like you said, killed the metal for a bit, and the metal world was trying to figure out how to keep up in the headlines wise, because like as soon as grunge came in, like all the thrash bands were kind of like, fuck, now it's on grunge, how do we stay relevant in like the mainstream world? And they didn't really quite have an answer to that until nu metal came around. With ended on last stream, how that was the last biggest spike that metal had genre wise, and yeah, how that happened. Before we move on, in a question to the Rebel stream chat, he says, can you ask the guys what their feelings on Awakening by Cybreed, what are their feelings on that, and if they've heard of it?
Oh, okay. Hang on. Yeah, Cybreed, melodic industrial semi-band from, I think they're from Sweden. I could be wrong on that shit. But yes, Hybrid had a lot of picked up from where Soilwork and In Flames, the whole melodic death metal scene came about, and they added a little bit of touches of industrial metal, which was really, really awesome. They have great songs. To the vocalist, very inspired into the 80s music, like Genesis, Depeche Mode. You have that type of vocalist with the industrial death metal sound to it, which was pretty weird at the time that Cybreed came out. But Cybreed, really amazing band. It's kind of like Fear Factory with Depeche Mode into it. If you guys are not familiar with what that band was. Shame that they're not around, but really good band. Really technical and precise. Being a technical melodic death metal band, which we don't have too much around nowadays. But really good. If you guys like Soilwork and Depeche Mode, Duran Duran, and shit like that, and just guys like Fear Factory, perfect band for you guys. So yeah, definitely check that shit out.
Hell yeah, Fear Factory.
Yeah.
I've never heard of Cybreed, but since you compared them to Fear Factory, I like them. I'll definitely give them a listen.
Yeah,
but I've never heard of them.
Especially, I am Ultraviolence. That song is like,
oh fuck,
is like technically hard to play. It's like obviously Meshuggah style when it comes down to the riffs. You got the industrial part that seeps in when you don't expect it to, and the vocalist is like electronic and just screaming at the same time. It's just really great song. Definitely recommend it to anybody. Listen to it. I Am Ultraviolence by Cybreed. Really good song to get into that sort
Shit,
of.
So they threw.
Yeah, really good song.
Shit, so they threw in some math metal in there.
Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah.
Nice.
Cool. I'll give them a listen as soon as the stream's over.
Yeah, I remember. Sorry. I remember Husk kind of sending me a few links in the private chat, Cybreed, and either the band that they transitioned from or transitioned into, and there was pretty good stuff. It kind of, like you were saying, some kind of like industrial melodic death metal with some what I considered maybe some screams to it as well. I know Husk isn't really the biggest fan of me saying that they kind of sound like post-hardcore. It's just the way it sounds like to me. I don't mean it disrespectfully. I'm not trying to like insult it, but like hard or post-hardcore screams, because hell, I had my emo days, man. I had like a fat stack of post-hardcore and metalcore in my collection. Probably still do. But yeah, like from what he showed me, Sidebreed is really good. If you haven't heard of them, I really like Soilwork. I like Trivium. So if it's anything like Fear Factory was my jams back in the day. So yeah, pretty solid stuff.
Yeah, if you're looking for the aggressiveness of Fear Factory, Cyber had it. What you're saying, Jesse, the post punk, would you say post hardcore? Yeah, you definitely see it in the lyrics, also in the mid '80s vibe to it, and yes, it's a big mixture of those genres, especially the time that band came out with, was just the right time, because it was perfect for them. Mixture of all genres. Unfortunately, that genre in particular didn't um, wasn't well known, but definitely a great gem into the melodic death metal and technical death metal aspect to it. That I think they were probably ahead of their time when they came out, but yeah, great band nonetheless.
But yeah, hopefully we addressed your to our best of our abilities there, Husk. Hopefully we answered is satisfactory. But we're going to move on to Trez now and tell us what some of his most important bands are and albums, and maybe a little bit about why. So take it away, Trez.
Ah, fuck. All right, let's see.
You are now on the spot.
Yeah. Okay. I got the fuck do I got here? Okay, I got Kind of a Corpse to Bleeding, because fucking obviously Kind of a Corpse to Bleeding was great band that I spent a lot of time listening to in fucked up times, which meant a lot to me. Every single song on there, I remember putting the tape and rewinding the tape, and just going to parties and all kinds of fucking debauchery with that album. Especially going to place with The Bleeding from Cannibal Corpse was the shit on tape. I fucking love that. Yeah. Suffocation, Pierce from Within. Um, when I was in the band early in long time ago, we had this drummer, and we were full of shit, and we couldn't even play instruments, but we saw this drummer, and we convinced him to play with us, and he agreed to it. And when we asked him, what can you play, even though we didn't know how to play shit, this dude played Pierce from Within from song 1 to the last song, from Bringing the Spawn, and we're like, holy shit. Yeah, and he stayed with us for a long time, and awesome Suffocation, Pierce from Within. Obviously, Nocturnus, The Key, which was one of my favorite old school death metal bands, which I grew up with, and buying CDs back then, which was one of my favorite all-time bands. Next we have, which I actually have the original CD here, Eternal Bleeding, Voracious Concept. Which is falling apart because if I open it up, you could plainly see that it's not
Yeah.
it's not all there. But even though
Such a
have
classic album, though.
yeah, classic, and to me, League of Inveracity of Suffocation and this album from Internal Bleeding were the early beginnings of slam, and that obviously one of the genres that I hold dear to me. So yeah, Internal Bleeding. Deeds of Flesh, Path of the Weakening was the mixture between fucking brutal death metal and fucking art. When it comes down to brutal death metal, I know brutal death metal could be straightforward, but Deeds of Flesh, Path of the Weakening was that one album that had riffs and had a thought to me to those riffs that could be slowed down and had that feel to it. And it was the one concept album that Path of the Weakening had that was from Deeds of Flesh, which was just amazing. And the other ones, I have some sort of uh, props, because you always have to have props, I guess. Which would be Sepultura Arise.
Nice.
There you go.
Fuck
Maybe.
yeah.
Great
Fantastic album.
Yeah, because it's a mixture between thrash and death metal that I could just listen to for days and just get lost in every single riff, and it was so well produced.
What time
That
stop doing that mix of like thrash and death and kind of move towards new metal? Was it Roots?
yeah, definitely Roots. Obviously when Core came out, because obviously they copied the Korn sound, but definitely Roots. Yeah, because when
So-
this other album, hold on, I got a flag for that too, or something. Hold on, holding it backwards, maybe.
Cool.
There you go. Yeah, Chaos AD album. Maybe it
Fuck
doesn't
yeah.
show up as good, but yeah, Chaos AD album. Around that same time, I'm not just talking about that particular album in general, but I think every single band, from Machine Head, from Sepultura, and every other band out there, even Slayer. I think that was the same time that Diablos and Musica came out. Once Sepultura started doing that whole corn stuff vibe, I think every band between 95 to 97 started doing that whole fucking one chord genre type stuff like Machine Head did. But yeah, that time was fucking awesome and really cool. All right, so I'm trying to move forward because I got a bunch of shit. Samael, summary, ceremony of opposites. Samael, really amazing stuff. Was my first, even though it probably wasn't black metal, but was my first introduction to evil fucking music. And I loved everything about Samael, Ceremony of Oppositions. I remember having a long sleeve shirt of that with the Christ with the nails in his fucking forehead, and for some reason, me and my brother shaved our heads when that album came out. I don't know why, but and we walked there on the streets trying to go. To write it for all places to get the Hit Parader and Metal Maniacs magazine, and everybody looked at us all weird because we had both of us were like had shaven heads and shit. But yeah, that's my fond memory from that album. Let's see, I got only like a couple more. Dark Funeral. Gotta fuck this up right now. Terra Tutus Sanctus. Everybody knows that album. I know Jesse probably hating it because it's probably one of the Red albums. I know it's the Red album, so yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
the funny thing is, I didn't actually go and check out too many of the other ones. Like, if you want a good Darkthrone album or Dark Funeral album, sorry, go listen to the Blue stuff. Just did that. I just kind of took people's advice and just stuck away from it. I'm pretty sure I did like get one of the Red albums anyways. Like, oh fuck, I don't know. I'm looking for it, but okay, where the hell is this? Dark. I'll just find it.
Well, the reason for my liking this album, because obviously I like the early Dark Funerals albums, because obviously I'm old as fuck. But when this album came out, I was dealing with a bunch of shit, and I really starting into a lot of occultish black metal music. If you guys are familiar with my channel, you know what I'm fucking talking about. But it was the first album and the one song, 666 Voices Inside, that during this time it was fucked up for me, that I deal with self-harm and suicide, and this is the one song I could definitely relate to when it comes down to that. So this song has been with me until this day, and obviously, we all have our own shit, and this song definitely brings me back to that point in time of my life, so it means a lot. All right, so anyway, moving forward, we got White Zombie, Sexorcismo. Oh, Sexorcista, I guess. Which great fucking album. When I first had a band, was one of the drummers, the only song that he could play, and we were blown away. And yeah, definitely love everything about this album. The vibe and feel to that album was just great, and unfortunately, I don't think it could be replicated. So yeah,
Nice.
Great,
The earliest thing by White Zombie I got is this. I used. I'll just make them die slowly.
Yeah, that was a great. The album artwork and the back cover of that's just fucking gorgeous. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, and the Dark Funeral album I was talking about, whatever that one is.
Yeah, Inferno Satanas or something like that. I forget what it's called.
Teptum or Tepium? Fucking hell.
Avernum, Infernus Avernum or some shit like that. I forgot what it's called. But yeah, great album too. Yeah.
It says Diabolus in Tepium,
Oh fuck.
I think.
But yeah, the Red albums, I love them all. Great shit. How about nice?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there you go. You got a Red album. Yay.
Yeah. Eventually get them all, just because I'm collector scum like that, but gotta be a completionist.
Yep. And then I guess other than that would be I don't know. I guess it would be fucking Skid Row, Slave to the Grind, Suicidal Tendency, War Inside My Head, shit like that. That's really obviously Ace of Spades, fucking Paranoid. Obviously a lot of Black Sabbath. But yeah, good stuff all around.
So is that the end of your list?
Yeah. Besides fucking obviously Motorhead, you know, like everybody has mentioned, Judas Priest. Yeah, pretty much. You know, those are my main cores of when it comes down to music. Obviously, once we first listen to music, doesn't reflect what we listen to now, but obviously our core um, music would be all this stuff. So yeah, that would be pretty much it. At least for me.
Uh, once again, lots of great bands and albums mentioned for sure. Anything too specific to shine a spotlight on, but yeah, lots of really good stuff there. Like and some of that death metal stuff you were talking about too. Yeah. Well, I guess to shine a spotlight on Trez's mentions there.
It's a bit off topic, but Dark Funeral, they definitely have some great stuff. I saw them live last year with Septic Flesh. It was a co-headlining tour. I swear to God, I've never been so bored during a headlining set. Like I said, I like their songs, but it's just like, for whatever reason, you know, Dark Funeral, when I saw them live, they didn't cut it for whatever reason. So yeah, a bit off topic, but I don't know why I felt like I had to throw that in there. I think maybe it's because I'll be seeing them again when they tour in Belfig or an Incantation in May.
I guess when you have a certain image in your head, go in with some pre-expectations of what a band should bring to the table, sometimes they underperform necessarily because they're actually underperforming, but because maybe they're just not living up to the hype that you thought they would be.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
yeah,
I've gotten that one time with Hypocrisy. I've never seen Hypocrisy ever, and the one time that they came to the States in New York back in the day, they were they sounded like nothing like, you know, I had built them up in my head. And obviously listening to their albums, one, because I guess they were probably drunk off their asses, and when they played, it was like, what the fuck. You know, it was cool to see them, but at the same time, it was like, oh fuck, dude. I wish I would have waited to the next show when they came back around. Yeah, because it was crap when they first came around.
yeah.
I think also because I was more hyped to see Septic Flesh than any of the other bands on that tour. You know, even though, like I said, I liked some of Dark Funeral stuff, it was kind of one of those things where I was kind of like being an asshole, I guess, where I was like, fuck, I really want to see Septic Flesh. I got to see this band first. God damn.
Yeah, well, it's always that way when you go to see a show and you're like, you're really hyped up, you know, you save your money and what have you to go see that one band, and you know, any other band's like, all right, come on, bring it on.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely get that.
Yeah, I try not to be like that just because, you know, these opening bands are working really hard to, you know, try to build themselves up. But sometimes it's just like, fuck, can I just get to the band that I want to see?
Well, hey man, I'd consider myself lucky to see any of this. As I kind of bitch about almost every other stream, we don't see shit up here. And if we do get playing up here, Antifa shuts them down because they blackmail and threaten the local venues to get bands out, and the venues don't want to have to deal with like bomb threats or threats of violence or anything like that. Their venues name trashed, so they're like, nope, sorry Watain, nope, sorry Graveland, nope, sorry Insert I'll play, because this group is saying they're gonna trash our venue, or they're going to call in a bomb threat so that you can. So yeah, it just sucks. I'd be happy with seeing any black metal band up here in Canada.
Yeah, I never had to deal with Antifa where I'm at, but I know it mostly happens in Canada, but there's been a couple times down here in the States. I remember last year or the year before, Marduk was doing a tour, and they were in San Francisco or Oakland, somewhere in Northern California, and Antifa shut them down too. And then Take, I think that's how that band's pronounced. They had to cancel their entire North American tour because of Antifa.
Fuck. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that a certain group of individuals will take us to insert themselves into situations where they really aren't needed, where they're really not welcome, and just good times, and ruin these artists' like jobs. Basically, like, it's their job to and make money from the concert sale tickets and whatever, so they can continue making their music. And these PC SJW fucking idiots who can't go and do proper research and fight, like modern day Nazi type people, they got to go focus their hatred and their personal beliefs on bands. I mean, like, they just don't get it, I guess. They don't understand our entertain people. They're here to put on a show, have, the audience and singing along or buying merch and help funding the venue and just kind of keeping the music industry turning. Not very many bands, if like at all, a very few, actually or perform the extremist acts that Antifa thinks they're committing. Like, they'll dig into bands past and try to find any sort of National Socialist or Nazi affiliation, attack them because they can't find any legitimate, substantial enemies to. So they're so focused on burning the witch that they can't make up these false or very minimal accusations into mountains in order to find something ridiculous. Like, it's just a band. They're just trying to play music. They're just trying to help people have fun in their miserable lives. Why anyone in their right mind would try to stop it is beyond me. Like, I don't like country music. I don't like opera. You see me forming some sort of social group to shut down their shows? No.
And nine times out of 10, the out has nothing really to do with being Nazis or anything, other than they're just singing about it to inform people.
Yeah, it's, especially when it comes down to black metal. I think that it was you know, when it comes down to their countries, obviously that comes involved in their culture because they grew up with it, or their grandparents or parents grew up with it, having to experience the war, um, which was World War II and what was going on, and them singing about it is pretty much experience and what their grandparents and their parents experience and their it's like kind of like when you grew up, your parents taught you this and told you how it was back in the day. That's how, obviously that's what they experienced. So growing up um, in those bands back in the day, obviously that's what their themes are gonna come out of. You know, Panzer Christ and all those things is obviously hardship. That's kind of gonna they're gonna get their inspirations from. So I don't think that is right for Antifa. They're just grasping at straws when it comes down to themes, and they should obviously respect where they grew up from and their culture and their history, which those bands rose up from. So yeah, they're just bitching about bullshit that they don't know nothing about. So that's my two
Yeah.
cents of that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, man, they're so caught up in trying to find witches that the desperation ends up over people that aren't National Socialists, that aren't modern neo-Nazis, that aren't anything like that. And down these witches to burn, Antifa will just accuse anyone of being a Nazi sympathizer. I feel they have someone to attack and justify their cause, because solving violence with more violence is the right thing.
But
That's been proven over and over again in history, hasn't it?
yeah, that's the thing though. Metal is the one genre in music that pretty much doesn't give a shit about anything. We could pretty much talk about anything, whether it be say the devil, God, social nationalists, whatever, and suicide. We could talk about pretty much anything. Depression,
Weed.
love, hate, anything. And this is the one genre of music that's pretty much no holds bar, and definitely have each band has the freedom to speak their mind. And it's one thing to hear a band and to listen to a band. There's a big difference that a lot of people don't understand. You could hear a band and it sounds cool, but it's one thing to listen to a band, listen to their message, listen to what they're about. It's up to you to the person experiencing the band and whether they like it or not, and just pass on it. If you don't like it, don't listen. Don't fucking listen to it. It's fucking easy as that. Plain and simple.
Yep.
And keep your opinions to yourself.
Yeah, and also I would add to that, keep your fucking religion to yourself.
Oh yeah.
Because no one cares.
Yeah.
Because this is not the platform to do this shit on. Obviously, we all have our right. There's Christian black metal bands. There's obviously traditional black metal bands, and there's everything in this. And we don't give a shit. We support. We listen to them, and we take topics and interpret it metal in every way possible. It's up to the listener to interpret shit and just draw your conclusions. That's about it. Don't try to fucking, raise a flag towards this shit. Fuck off. We don't need that shit. We don't want that shit. And fuck you for raising a flag towards that, because it's not your right to raise a flag towards that. Because metal is interpretation, and that's about it. It's not up to you. The band doesn't need you to raise a flag for shit. The band just, every band just creates a music, creates a lyrical themes, and it's up to interpretation. That's about it. Fuck you for raising a flag towards any fucking thing. We don't need any of that shit in this music. This music never needed anybody's help to fight their battles for. So yeah, fuck you for trying to do that. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, every single band, and just don't give a shit, because all that shit will fall to the wayside, and it doesn't matter when it comes down to it. Metal is fucking a basic plain slate that everybody could voice their opinion on, and the once we start caring about any little bullshit, it stops fucking being metal, and it starts being
It starts being fun.
It starts being fun, and fuck that shit. That's all.
That was quite the rant there.
Sorry about that.
It's fun.
It's okay. I kind of riled him up by mentioning Antifa.
Yeah, because
So
seriously,
it's your fault, Jesse.
yeah, because no, seriously, and I'll do fun or whatever, because I'm old as fuck, and I don't really give a shit, what you have to say, because I've been through all this shit, but metal could be political. Metal could be about all these different subjects. It's up to you, to the listener, to interpret this shit. But you really shouldn't bring very negative shit towards metal, because metal is all about freedom and all about freedom of expression. So please take that shit somewhere else, because it's not wanted here. It's never been about that. So
Yeah, man. Well said.
Yeah.
Keep extreme metal extreme, because that's what it's supposed to be. Well, out of the way, I guess I'll take a moment to go through these stacks of my important albums. The lag, I know it gets bad sometimes. I'll take a break every couple of CDs just so that we can kind of catch up if I do get. So the first kind of couple of albums that are important to me are basically going back to my heavier music, just kind of getting through hard rock into metal. And this is always going to be something I always go back to, listen to it every day. I might not listen to it every month, but every now and then I'll go back to it. And that's this kind of era of Alice Cooper, going just a bit above hard rock, maybe slightly tiptoeing into metal at times. But yeah, Raise Your Fist and Yell was probably one of my favorite albums, like before I was like 9 or 10. Dark, it was creepy. He was talking about like serial killers, and he even talked about cervix from the point of view of a killer. So it was like really dark and kind of creepy to me at the time as like a kid. And then once I kind of got beyond that, to like more darker stuff like this, Black Sabbath's Paranoid album that I originally got into, which was We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll. But this has most of the I kind of favor. So yeah, paranoid with things like War Pigs, the self-titled track, Iron Man, Fairies Wear Boots, Electric Funeral, like all that was just.
Fairies Wear Boots
Yeah.
is still my favorite Sabbath song.
It is a really good song for sure. And just like that dark, doomy, yet still kind of catchy beat riffs that Tony Iommi did was fantastic to me at the time. Like, once again, still before 9 or 10 years old when I heard this stuff. And it was just just the next level for me, because before that, I used to listen to just kids' music. Like, I don't know, just whatever I guess the other little kids were listening to at the time, like Raffi or kids like Ain't It Great to Be Crazy or whatever that kid's song was. But then like I heard this stuff from my mom, and when I was really young, I was like, wow, this is fucking music. I can get into this. And I kind of opened up a new world to me. So I'm thankful for that. And that just definitely turned me into the metalhead I am today. Beyond that, similar vein, but going from like Sabbath into more grungy side of things, this album got play back when I was a young kid. Soundgarden's Superunknown album, because it kind of sounded grungy, but also kind of sounded sad. And yeah, like I used to listen to Superunknown and Spoonman and Kickstand and Black Hole Sun a lot. It had a lot of emotion to it. It was kind of dark, and you're young, this kind of hits a certain spot for you, especially when things are really shitty. You're dealing with like breakups or just, you know, reject the opposite sex in general, and you just want this moody music to listen to because of it. You want to kind of get in your feels for it. It was very dark, very depressing, very kind of Sabbathy sounding grunge to me. So that kind of like obsession with the dark and kind of moodier type of grungy metal stuff back when I was a young teen. And then eventually I kind of what I would consider a cousin, but they're not like actually related, but their name was, and that was like early 90s to late 80s thrash. So like Slayer, and he had a Thin Lizzy album for some reason, so I thought that was the kid, but it wasn't, obviously. And then this happened. I ended up hearing Seek and Destroy by Metallica, and man, so like that was one of my first exposures to thrash. So Kill 'Em All is definitely like those milestones in my teen years, where like I'm like, okay, I can definitely see where I'm going to be tastes in the next few years. So I definitely got into some like old school thrash back then. So, you know, Metallica, Megadeth, Full of Metal by Anthrax, even some of the like the grungier nu metal-y versions too. So like Sound of White Noise, Stomp 443, I think is the name of one of them, and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of had like a slight thrash phase when I was in like middle school. So like
you're still
grade 7 and grade 8. Sorry?
You're still having that phase.
Yeah. But then like for whatever reason, that like 90s nu metal thing, and like grade 9, 10, or 11 for me, and this album Disturbed's was something I listened to like daily. Me and my buddy Blaine Gilder back in high school used to listen to this all the time, making a new metal band, but never really kind of got into fruition. We both played guitar, but we could never find like a drummer and could never find a bassist or anything like that. So it's just kind of like a dream that we had. But yeah, like the Down with the Sickness and like vocal grunting thing that David Draymond did was kind of like new and we us. So like all the tracks that he did, those kind of vocal enunciations that weren't words, was kind of neat. I don't know why I'm opening this, but yeah, kind of a big thing for me, like early high school, and anyone who was anyone had this album, titled Slipknot one, Wait and Bleed, Spit It Out, Surfacing, Eeyore, all that stuff. Yeah, I didn't know any metalhead who didn't have this in high school, so that was huge for me. And the idea of wearing masks was like, what the fuck? That, like, it never dawned on me until I'm like, wait a minute, that's a cool fucking. And I discovered bands like Mushroom Head, Guar, fucking hell, should be popping into my head, like Berserker.
Berserker, yeah. I was about to chime in on that, but yeah, Berserker, yeah.
Yeah, and then Lordy. So those kind of bands. Then this started my like, man, if there's one band that has a bunch of others, so then I just kind of like jumped all over Wikipedia and jumped all over like any site online that I could to see if I could find other bands that, you know, had masks or whatever, whether they were good or bad. I didn't care. I just wanted to find them. But yeah, Slipknot was kind of a huge thing for me back in high school. And then once the kind of thrash and new metal kind of obsession with me was over to dwindle, I met the guy from The Zone, which was my local, local kind of CD store. I've talked. Ken Masters ran The Zone, and he would, start suggesting stuff to me. And he's like, "Do you listen to death metal?" And then I started naming off a few bands, and he's like, "No, not like that." And he's like, "Have you heard of Cannibal Corpse?" And I'm like, "Cannibal Corpse on Ace Ventura," and that was some like really growly stuff, right? Pick up Tomb of the Mutilated and pick up this album. So I picked up Tomb of the Mutilated, Bringer of Blood by 6 Feet Under. I kind of leaned more towards 6 Feet Under because it was more kind of like death metal. There's more hooks to it and stuff, and not just constant double kick and blast. I make out quite a bit of what he was saying on this than I could early Cannibal Corpse. So I kind of, if it wasn't for basically this album by 6 Feet Under, I would have not have gotten into death metal as soon as I did. Now Chris Barnes' vocals, either like on this album or after, but this album and before, Chris Barnes, like, I don't care who you are, like, you gotta admit, like, anything Bringer of Blood or before, probably before, but like Maximum Violence or Maximum Carnage and Ultraviolence, I don't know. Either way, those two albums were really good vocal-wise by him, and crazy. This, I guess, is probably where it started to go downhill for his vocal abilities, but this is the amazing. The guitarist in this was an insane. Like I don't know. He mixed like down with like some like blues metal riffs, just sped it up a few decibels, and there you go. But yeah, that was a huge turning point, which got me into more traditional, more recognized stuff like this. This was the first Death, The Sound of Perseverance. First track ever I heard by Death was Bite the Pain, and I'm like, yep, this is definitely something I'm going to be really, yeah, I had to get this album. I still need to go back and get their first albums because they're really good too. Doesn't hit me them, but still really, really good stuff, really good riffs. So yeah, first post Chris Barnes related death metal band that I got into. How's the leg going so far? Getting pretty bad?
No, it's not that bad.
All right.
Yeah, nothing worse than
after that, sorry?
I said nothing worse than usual. You can keep going.
So after that, me and my cousin Brett, who's actually now the drummer for In the Act of Violence, but before that he was in Enter Euphoria. You could still probably find some stuff online. But me and Brett, we got into this band pretty heavy during high school as well. And this was my favorite album by Children of Bodom, Hatebreeder. If you're going to get into Children of Bodom, this is the album to do it. This is the, I think, second album. If this isn't the second album, then it's Follow the Reaper, but I'm pretty sure this is the stuff. But yeah, it had so many good songs on it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say Follow the Reaper was one album that I got into, but yeah, that album's fucking awesome as well. So yeah, man, nice for mentioning that. Jesse.
Did we lose Jesse? Oh shit.
Oh shit.
Hey.
This ain't good.
Alright, so anyway, Children on the Bottom, great stuff. It's kind of the same thing. Green album, Blue album from Children on the Bottom. So hey, Jesse, there you are.
Oh, I'm back. Okay.
Go. Yeah, keep going.
Good.
So, Children on the Bottom?
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can all hear you.
Lost you for a second, but got you good now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, a bunch of good album or songs on this album. Night, Bloody or Bodom Night, Hatebreeder. Bed of Razors was one of my favorite tracks.
Bed of Razors, yeah, good shit.
I think Black Widow was the first song I ever heard by these guys, actually. But yeah, if you're looking to get into children, definitely start with Hatebreeder. These were kind of my first introduction to extreme metal, so stuff that didn't really specific category. It's got some thrash elements, it's got some black elements, it's got some melodic dance, and of course it has some keyboards in there because they love their keyboard sound in there. But yeah, this was kind of like an offshoot and kind of got me into Cradle of Filth. This kind of helped me get into Dimmu. It helped me get into Emperor and stuff like that. But it didn't really manifest any DG, like an album by Synergy after that, with the song I Spit on Your Grave, which is a fucking amazing song. About where it ended, I didn't kind of go in that direction any further. I kind of went back into a different genre, and that would be where I started core stuff. So I got stuff like Chelsea Grin here, with Desolation. Now, I did originally have their self-titled EP, but I ended up selling it because I needed the money. Listen to it online if I really wanted to, because I figured I've already spent the money on it, so I'm entitled to listen to it online if I want. But yeah, this, when it first came out, me and my cousin Brett would listen to it a lot. This was kind of a big deal back then as well for me. Also with the cleansing.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to. Yeah, I kind of want to get the EP or whatever that came before this. It's probably going to cost a pretty penny, but yeah, this was pretty big. No Coward was like the huge song back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Pull the Trigger Bitch. And this, the Infinite Death by Thy Art is Whore to a Chainsaw. Probably one of the biggest tracks I listened to back then as well. It was pretty tongue-in-cheek for back then, but now standard-wise. But yeah, this album or EP or whatever was something that I'd put on. Why I feel I'm probably lucky to have a copy of this, because I hear it's hard to come by. But yeah, those albums there were kind of like huge for my kind of post death metal, extreme metal days. And then started focusing on like going on YouTube and that suggested videos rabbit hole. I ended up finding this. And I just thought, man, I knew I enjoyed it. That would be Abominable Putridity with the Existence. And man, my world was definitely changed after I heard that.
Fuck yeah. Fuck
yeah. Going from No Pity from a Coward to Entrails Full of Vermin.
Yeah, that's the one song. That song is just fucking definition of slam. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So going from No Pity for a Coward to and hold on to something great, and I knew it was the beginning of a wonderful new relationship. I kind of started my channel, taking it a little bit more seriously, and started getting more into like news and collection updates, because I'm like, man, I got to share this with the world. I got to let the world know about bands like this, because if I discovered something new randomly like this, I hope someone else does and falls in love with it just like I did. So yeah, that was kind of like a pretty big for me in my musical journey. After I heard that, it was all downhill. Like I had to see what was heavier. I had to see what was grimier. I had to see what was more brutal. And once humbling, I ended up finding this Cephalotripsy album, which was basically just the end of human existence, acid and on crack. Never mix acid with crack, by the way. Bad idea.
How would you know?
You meant Chimera?
It just
human
a bad idea. But the album was like down-tuned, grimy, filthy slams, one after another. the vocals on flushed a toilet and recorded maybe some like gargling of mouthwash or something, but man, it was just so heavy, and I was like, damn, this is great. And my kind of obsession with slam began. So I started like getting used to the genre and whatever, and then I kind of found another band that kind of took me in like a split again. This kind of where it started turning me down the slamcore side of things, where kind of slam hit its peak, and there is no more. And then that's when bands like Acranius started adding in like a deathcore element, and adding more of like a boppy kind of feel to their music as well, and not just like and started adding more kind of different vocal stylings other than just toilet noises. So it added some stuff that you could kind of maybe growl along to if you heard the vocal or heard the lyrics. And yeah, so I kind of started getting into stuff like slamcore through Acranius, so bands like Gutrectomy or Guttural Slug or Vulvodynia, you know, bands like that. Really interesting stuff for sure. So thanks to Acranius for doing that. Actually, I kind of started getting back into a different genre again, and once like kind of like just kind of overdid itself, and I listened to way too much of that all the time, and the production of it was starting to get really big and really over the top. So I guess discovering what people would consider, you know, real black metal, which is basically just traditional 90s black metal, stuff like this started to appeal to me. First album, and I got the Ask EP on there too, but Burzum's first album was just like, man, like going from huge crazy slam production with some of like the major bands that did that, going down to this kind of stuff was like a whole new, like, going, oh wow, you can have really dark kind of music, but without having to down tune your guitar 40 million steps. You can have really grim evil without guttural vocals, and like you know, just like perfect kind of, yeah. So discovering Burzum and that kind of black metal was kind of a breath of fresh air, but kind of in the opposite direction. So then I kept digging, and then there's this album, which fucking just did it times 10. The most lo-fi, most like sinister, dark, like crazy stuff you can find black metal, I guess. Like, I'm sure there's more raw black metal bands now, and maybe like a few years, once everyone the black heard this kind of stuff, they're like, oh well, this is the true way to do it. We're gonna do even more lo-fi our recording. So, but yeah, Transylvanian Hunger was definitely the cornerstone for what affected black metal, and so that was really cool to hear back then. It's a very important album for me because it kind of just showed me, as an artist myself, that you don't have to have $1 million production to be good. You don't have intricate, technical, crazy, you know, guitaring to enjoy. You just create something for the love of creating it, and basically do it out of your garage, or do it at a bedroom recording studio, and it still be worth something beyond just your own enjoyment. So I hand it to Darkthrone's Transylvanian Hunger for just kind of hitting that point home. So there's only one thing.
Transylvanian
Go ahead.
Hunger are two of my favorite black metal albums.
Nice. So yeah, there's another, and that was kind of, once again, kind of taking what black metal did, as we all know, is basically a giant fuck you to death metal, because everyone in the black metal scene at the time produced death metal. We're tired of the high production. We're tired of all these really bright. We're just going to do black and white. We're going to do lo-fi production as possible. We're going to do the most like uneasy sound, and just lots of reverb and treble with barely any bass.
Swedish life metal
kind of thing. Huh?
Swedish life metal.
Pardon?
Trez gets that.
Yep.
But it went from that kind of thing where it's like that's finger to death metal to, it went from there to kind of like, all right, well, not only is that true and different, but now we're actually going to go back a step and start adding in some earlier music. Satyricon kind of saying fuck you to the traditional black metal and adding in rock and roll. So that was kind of the pioneering album, now Diabolical, for black and roll, which is cool. It takes elements of like kind of groovy, catchy riffs to the black metal elements, where it's still sort of lo-fi. There's still that like growl. It's still like that demonic high-pitched growl added in there. They're still talking about Satan and pentagrams, and kind of putting themselves on a pedestal, because that's what black metal was. It was foregoing any god and saying, no, I am what is important. I am to be worshipped. And they put themselves on a pedestal and kind of that kind of thing. But they also threw in some like better quality production and some more rock and roll oriented kind of the riffs. And they said, this is the new thing, and we don't care about what's true or cult. We're just good to us, but still use some black metal roots as well. So kudos to Satyricon for kind of sticking it to the cult and saying no to these old true ways, and we're going to just make what we want to make as artists. So yeah, Diabolical kind of milestone album for me as well, when I just discovered that you don't have to be just cavernous lo-fi black metal to be good music or good black metal. So yeah. Any thoughts? Yes, no,
I got nothing.
maybe.
Not offhand, nah. Definitely some good music though.
Yeah.
I like a lot of those albums.
I think there was a lot of shift when it came to Satyricon, because obviously they were in it when it first started, and with any band that dealt with the changes in obviously black metal, the rise of obviously more theatrical black metal like Cradle of Filth, Demon Borger, symphonic black metal. Came to Satyricon to bring back the Semite roots into black metal, because black metal was based on obviously Venom and bands like Celtic Frost and Hellhammer, and bringing it back down to core riffs. I think that's what Satyricon did very smart in the late 90s and early 2000s, or well, pretty much 2000s, mid 2010, I guess, era. That it's pretty smart for them to do that shit with the rock and roll spin on black metal, which is very smart and good, because it's a refreshing part of black metal, because everybody could relate to that sort of black metal. So
they're a fun band.
Yeah, it's a fun band to listen to. It's like you go out to have a couple of drinks with your bandmates and friends, and it's a song you could just listen to, which is pretty cool.
I've heard people call them the AC/DC of black metal.
Yeah, which I think now you have the whole problem now with they face with what Satyricon was faced with. Now I guess you have that same problem with Ghost, because nobody knows what to think about Ghost. Even though if
I don't care what people say, I love Ghost.
I love Ghost too. You got bands like what was it King Diamond, what is it where's the other band that has Diamond in it, but
Merciful Fate.
Merciful Fate, and what's the other band? God damn it.
Diamond Head? Maybe?
Diamond Head, there you go.
Yeah.
You got all these bands that have that history in that metal.
That are they're so important to what metal is today that yet they don't really get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, and Ghost tipped their toe in all those genres and all those bands, and released what they are now.
Yeah.
So they don't get as much cred as I think they should. I know a lot of people say that it's fucking fad or whatever, but
it's still good music.
It's still good music. Still good.
That doesn't change anything.
Yeah, still good rhythms. Still good. It brings you back to that point of time, which I think is always. If a band could bring you back, I think that's a good shit for that band, and that's.
You talk about a good voice.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, his voice is good, even though I know what happened and the controversy and the whole drama within the band. I hate that bullshit, but you got to give it up to the band that sounds the way they do, bringing it back old school the way they do. It reminds you a lot about King Diamond, Diamond Head, all that shit, which is a plus, at least to me. So yeah.
Yeah, funny how things almost come full circle at a certain point, because there's waves of rebellion. Like each wave of kind of new music is a form of rebellion when it comes to, anyways, not like mainstream, but like, because punk was rebellion to rock. Thrash was kind of like a rebellion against punk
and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then like you had death metal, which was just trying to push it to the which was kind of a rebellion against death metal. And then you had bands that were in the black just us attitude, the true cult against everything and what you could play or how you could play it. So bands like Satyricon kind of just going, fuck this, we're just going to play what we want to play, having that black metal root. And that was kind of like maybe an unintentional, maybe it was intentional, but rebellion against their black metal roots. So it's kind of interesting how that works. It's just, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think
it'll just be interesting to see what comes next. Yeah. What'll be the next big rebellious metal movement?
Yeah, I think it's more of a generational thing. It's more of every decade or two. I think it's every 2 decades that the new generation coming up has a tendency to a regression towards the old stuff. Like how bands now, if you've noticed it, this not talking just about metal, as in everything. If you notice, these kids nowadays are wearing these bright colors, it's like holy shit. You know, you look at it now, it's like fuck. It's like the '80s. But every once in a while, in every sort of media, they do this. Whether it be in movies, whether it be in music, in any port in time, they always do this. It's a regression towards the old style. And now I think we're experiencing that, not just in metal. If you see it in movies for the last 6 years, we've always seen this. You know, Hollywood has nothing original. They're just doing remakes. They're just bringing shit back to what they remember, what these producers and these script writers remember, and they're trying to bring that shit back. This is the same thing.
There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it, of course. But they're trying to bring that stuff back. If you look at the way black metal is now, it's kind of the way death metal is now. Is the way 8 years ago thrash metal was now. How they had that whole resurgence in new school thrash metal bands that were coming up. Now you have this whole resurgence in the old school death metal bands, which is pretty much prevalent right now, which is fucking awesome and cool. But you got these periods of time that if you acknowledge it and respect it, and you know, obviously have love for it, then you'll have a good time with the current state of music. But if you're against it, then you're gonna fight a trend that seems to happen every decade or so. That is no escaping it, because you're always, if you look back in history in metal, there's always that regression to the old school, because obviously either our parents or our grandparents were metalheads, and they liked stuff that, you know, showed us things, and you know, you grew up with that stuff. So once you grow up with that old school form of thinking in music, you always want to regress towards that and have a love towards that, and that's your main music, because that's your main influence. It's just a fucking nature of time.
So, right. So what you're saying is that we're not in an right now. We're more of in an age of nostalgia. So maybe once that nostalgia wave ends, we might see the next era. Right now, we're kind of living in an age where we're getting older, not like the next generation, but like us, kind of like the baby boomer metalheads that were just at the end of that Generation Z, I guess, or whatever. but we're now getting to the point where we're innocent and nostalgia about the past and kind of wanting to relive the glory days that now our time for rebellion is over, and we're hitting that nostalgia period. But maybe the next generation might be the next rebellion period in music.
Yeah, pretty much, because it's it always tends to happen. If you look at everything that you guys like, let's say Korn, Deftones, obviously Sabbath, obviously, but if you look at the timelines within those bands, there's always a shift, whether it be between those bands and a next band that you seem to not just. It's not a hard shift, but it's a subtle shift between those periods of time that I think that is coming up right now, because like how we all experienced the grunge era, the what is it, new metal era, and those times came to pass. Now is the time that I think that you won't probably notice it, but when it happens, it's like kind of hit you, and it's like, oh shit, we're living in those fucking times in metal that it's gonna fucking happen. So yeah.
Yeah. After what the next big thing is going to be, like maybe if we asked people like Matt, or like, what do you think is going to be the next kind of like big new metal genre, or what do you think is the next big kind of rebellious genre? Are we going to see a new black metal kind of thing happen, where not necessarily black metal, new genre that's going to pop up in defiance of maybe one of these kind of modern metal bands that the kids are just going to be like, this is too old, or this is too lame, or whatever, and we're going to create this instead. Nick or Matt, do you guys think that's going to happen? When do you think the new rebellious kind of sweep of metal bands are going to come in?
I think it already has happened, but not necessarily with metal. I think it's kind of happening with the SoundCloud rap thing that's been exploding the past couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Most everyone who I'm friends with, that's what they listen to, the SoundCloud rap.
And it's not good.
Well, for us anyway, obviously different people like different genres. Most of my friends listen to SoundCloud rap. I'm not going to bash them for that. I personally don't like it. There's not a single artist that I like that's come out of the SoundCloud rap shit. But, if my friends like it, I'm not going to bash them for that. That's what they like.
Me either.
For metal personally, we're kind of in like I think it was Trez. He said we're in the age where we're getting a whole lot of new death metal bands. That's fucking amazing. That's been going for the last couple years, and I think it's going to go for another few more. Maybe.
I hope it does.
Yeah, I hope it does too. I fucking love all these bands that are coming out now, all these new death metal bands. But, and maybe as little as 2 or 3 years, or maybe we'll get a whole decade out of it, like the 80s and all the hair metal bands that were coming out of it then. 2 years to 10 years, we will get some death metal. And then after that, maybe we'll go back to the 90s where we were getting this huge explosion of black metal bands, despite the fact that along with death metal, we're also getting a load of black metal bands out right now too. Or, we'll just there'll be a whole different type of metal that'll be invented, like new metal did in the 90s.
It'd be cool to see a resurgence of war metal.
That would be pretty sweet.
And I'm only saying that because of the flag that Trez has behind him.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, once this resurgence of death metal starts slowing down and unfortunately will likely come to a close, you know, maybe we'll see, like I said, a resurgence in black metal, because black metal came in the 90s, you know, after death metal came towards the end of the 80s. Or again, like I said, new metal came out for the first time in the mid 90s. Maybe we'll get a whole new genre. Or maybe new metal will repeat itself, you know?
I think it kind of is already.
New metal?
Yeah, and there's some bands out there that are kind of taking the new metal sound, and for example, what Pig Destroyer did with their last album.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really dig the last Pig Destroyer album all that much, but I could definitely see, now that you're saying it, I could see they definitely did put some new metal tinge stuff in there for sure.
I think part of it has to do with that they finally have a bassist in the band.
Yeah, definitely.
And nothing will ever top Bookburner, but
yeah, all the early Pig Destroyer stuff, that's untouchable. But that's like most bands, you know.
So what you guys are saying is kind of back swing than what we actually thought. So all these new cloud or SoundCloud rappers and kind of stuff that's coming up, that's sort of like the big gangster rap thing that started up in the late 80s then. So we're kind of actually almost back then at the time. So stuff like NWA, Easy, early Tupac, early Biggie, but now we're kind of in the later like 2010 to rap being like the big thing coming up again. So so you guys are saying that maybe once that big and that new genre of rap kind of hits a peak, we might see metal bands trying to incorporate that to their stuff so they can. So what you're saying is basically we're going to probably start seeing a variant of new metal, maybe not new metal itself, like a loud trap rap mixed with maybe certain metals to kind of be like the next new thing.
There is this thing called trap metal that a couple of my friends listen to.
Shit.
It's really terrible.
So
there's this like
2020.
There's like this one up and coming artist that's apparently labeled trap metal that I've never listened to, that's opening for Bring Me the Horizon on their next tour. And like apparently that dude's really like skyrocketing pretty high. But I guess kind of along with that, there's another band which I really dig. I think they're pretty good, called Fever 333, which coincidentally opened for Bring Me Horizon on their last tour, which I was lucky enough to see. And they are incorporating not really metal, but more hardcore elements along with rap. You know, I dig Fever 333. I think they're doing a great job. And I think maybe they could be like one of the purveyors for like what we were saying, where there could be like hardcore or metal or something that basically becomes a new metal genre in the next few years.
So like a cross between beatdown music and trap music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, I guess.
That'd be crazy.
Personally, I wouldn't be a fan of it, probably.
For me, it depends on the band. Because, like, with new metal, you know, I was a fan of Korn. I still am a fan of Korn. Slipknot and Disturbed get thrown into new metal. I like their stuff as well. So, you know, if all the bands coming similar to Fever 333, like, obviously being different from them, you know, I probably dig the genre, but obviously there's going to be some variety to it. If this does become the next big new metal genre, you know, I'm sure there's definitely going to be some bands that I'm not going to be a fan of, because that's just the way it is.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see something like SoundCloud rap or trap mix some goth or industrial metal happen.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like maybe if do you know who Cell Dweller is?
Yeah.
I've heard the name.
He's remixed some metal songs.
Yeah.
I think he does pretty good, especially his original stuff too.
So maybe we'll see something like Cell Dweller or Manson mixed with like trap or SoundCloud stuff.
I could get behind it if I think it's good.
Yeah.
That's always the big thing too. It comes down to personal opinion, you know.
What's your cat's opinion?
I'm just curious.
My cat's opinion is that she sleeps through any kind of music, so I'm sure she finds it soothing.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious because, like, we're you know, it's going to be 2020 soon, and we're living in what most movies would consider the future, right? So, like, where's this future? Where is this, like, you know, Doc Brown goes to the fucking future and sees this new shit that no kind of, that's what I want to know. Like, what's the next big thing that no one saw coming going to be happening? And like I would like to see a new like extreme genre that isn't just a mix of two genres put together, like rap and some sort of metal, or like country and some sort of, I don't know, goth music. I don't want to see like a mix of a brand new fucking genre in the underground or extreme realm that hasn't been thought of before. Like very interested to see what happens.
I think a genre that's probably been around already, but I think that is going to be more prevalent now. At least I'm hoping for is blackened ambient industrial.
That would be cool.
Yeah, because I could see a lot of black metal riffs with industrial, but obviously very clean. So I think how we had the 90s or I'm sorry, 90s, 2000s, late 2000s, and Swedish thrash metal, and I could see that type of sound happening with black metal, and just in some sort of industrial way, because the way it's going, it's probably gonna, if bands could do their obviously very dark in the black metal riffs, but the one in mixing industrial into it, which was something that was prevalent back in the day, but I think that has a future now, because bands have done that before, but it was hit or miss. But I think now would be a good time to do that.
So you're saying more experimental music is probably what we'll see in the future?
Yeah. Bands like let's say a Porcupine Tree, but more black metal with a little bit of industrial into it would be fucking amazing to
It'd be
hear.
really weird.
Yeah,
but
would be like
good.
Tool with industrial and just with a black metal fucking trim to it would be amazing. Can you imagine Tool on its own with the complexity that Tool has? And I know these new artists are like fucking fiending for. And to have that Tool element, the complexity to it, throw in a little black metal into it, and throw in a little bit industrial into it, I think that would be pretty fucking good listen to. I don't even care if there's lyrics to it. I would love to just hear that. Because that would be fucking cool.
Black and aggressive industrial metal.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. I mean, I love me some fucking old school black metal. But if you're into old school black metal, you know that all those black metal bands were into industrial metal. So back in the day, they couldn't do it, and it sounded fucking corny as cheesy as fuck. But doing it now, even bands like Brutal Truth that did that whole industrial weird shit, doing it properly now would be kind of cool. And that's the whole gripe that I had with Morbid Angel, and I guess we all couldn't agree with that Insaneness, whatever album that was called from Morbid Angel. I think if a band wanted to do that type of thing, let's say release a Morbid Angel album out, which was pure death metal, and then release a second like a digipack, releasing whatever the hell Insaneness Insanum was as a bonus DVD, because all the bands want to experiment, because we all have our own influences. But some of those big bands like Morbid Angel shouldn't probably do that. Which they should probably release a metal album, and then on the side notes or on the side B or a bonus DVD or bonus CD should release that second experimental thing. But I think now would be the perfect time to do that stuff, because apparently it has happened and hit or miss, but I think now would be the perfect time to try to do that, because great time to do it.
Fair enough, man. And so I guess guys first, black industrial prog is going to be the next big thing, according to Trez. So he's got that copyright on lock. So that's all we have left. That's all the time we have left for this episode. Hope everyone enjoyed this big 20. Talked about our most important bands of all time and why we felt they were important to us. Some problems and bands in the comment section below, that'd be awesome. And maybe even tell us what you think the future of metal or the underground be. Do you think it's going to be a mix of trap or SoundCloud music mixed with metal? Do you think it's going to be Trez's branded industrial prog, or what else? Let us know what your thoughts on the future of metal is going to be in the comment section below. Anywho, to my Rebellion panel, first to the OG member here himself, Trez from Total Motion, and then Green Iron Cannibal, and the newest Rebellion family member, shout out to Nick from Death Love. Please go check his channel out, please go subscribe, because they're going to be bringing some excellent content to you here. Watching, hope you enjoyed. Look forward to seeing you guys more in the future. Have a good night.
Cheers.